Hey there. So I was recently on a flight and it was a long flight, 5 hour flight about, and there was a lot of turbulence. Have you experienced a lot of turbulence? Like physical turbulence, right? Like the plane was very unsteady. And in that moment, we all get to manage based on our past experiences and who we are, how to get through that. And personally, I caught myself closing my eyes and imagining I was like four-wheeling, maybe in a Jeep or something stable, wheels on the ground and just really bumpy. That's what I closed my eyes and just imagined. And so I felt pretty secure, felt okay. Didn't give too much thought about that I wasn't four wheels on the ground. That's how I supported myself through that emotionally. But as I glanced kitty corner, one seat, one row ahead of me, I noticed a young woman and she was very distraught. She was struggling. She had, you could see her wiping tears, closing her eyes, breathing. And I'm thinking, did her and her husband get in an argument? Like what? But he seemed okay and maybe even used to her having the experience. So I was like, I wonder if it's the turbulence. I wonder what's going on. And of course, it would be embarrassing for her if I was like, hey, you okay? She didn't need me to bug her about that. But I was aware and noticed and put out there that if there was a moment that I could reach out to her, that it would happen. And if it didn't, that's okay. But I thought it gave me a lot of perspective about like when we feel so uncertain, like what we do, how do we get through those uncertain and unsteady moments, right? Because turbulence is unsteady movement. It's not steady. It's not sure. It's unsure. It's unpredictable. Now, the pilots felt safe and okay with it. They know what to do with it, right? But I'm not a pilot and I don't know much about that. So where do we go in our mental practices to be the master of what we're giving energy to and power to? There is a moment to be a realist, and there's a moment to not, and to think about the implications of things. And there's moments that are not. In that situation, it wasn't helpful to think of the reality of all the possibilities. That it's out of my control and it wouldn't have been helpful. But that doesn't mean that some people, maybe that works for some people. For me, I didn't feel necessary. But I was observing this young woman. I really thought like, what things am I certain about in this situation, knowing that I'm not really four-wheeling, I'm in an airplane high in the sky, that make it possible for me to even close my eyes and imagine that I'm four-wheeling, right? What am I certain about that makes me okay in uncertain situations? Because I've been in uncertain situations. Like there were years and moments that I was uncertain how the house payment was going to get paid, right? Like in a transitional period of raising family and taking upon that load upon my own shoulders at some point, there was a time that I was uncertain about that, but I was certain about a lot of things also. And they really carried me through. And I think those are the same things that even up on that airplane, I can lean into, right? Like I'm certain that no matter what happens, me and the people I care about have support, and whether it be neighbors, friends, family, like we are very supported and surrounded by love. That feels so certain to me. And it can get me through a lot of moments, right? What's certain in myself? That I'm pretty resilient. Actually, I'm very resilient, sometimes to a fault, and it doesn't always serve me, but a lot of times it does. So I'll be grateful for that. But I'm resilient. I am capable of handling stressful situations. I can think outside of myself. I can, in a moment, I'm certain that even in a very stressful time, I will persevere to the best of my ability, right? So that was that experience. And then I had a whole new twist put onto it. And I so appreciated that I happened to be visiting my good friends up in the mountains in their house, in their home, and with so many feet of snow. Crazy how many feet is like, seriously, Midway, Utah has gotten so much snow that it's like they live in an ice castle. It was crazy. Anyway, but I was talking to my friend and she said, oh, I can't do turbulence at all. I was telling her about my experience. She said, I can't do it at all. And I'm like, how come? And she said, when I was 14 years old, she was on a plane traveling in Australia, a smaller plane, and hit an air pocket and turbulence, and the plane dropped 30 feet in the air. Okay, that's not just a little bump. That's not just a little bump. And I'm like, all of a sudden, the idea, like if that had been my experience that I'd had at some point in my life, you're right. One little bump, you don't know if that's going to be an inch or 30 feet or more, right? And so I'm like, oh, an experience and people's past experiences really can affect how people would respond to that, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, turbulence doesn't affect me at all, but I haven't had her experience. And so I don't get to, I can't even imagine what that would feel like, right? So I think the second thing we get to offer ourselves in an experience of uncertainty is the awareness and the recognition of where we're coming from, what we've been through, and not use it as a banner to wave as an excuse or a reason, right? But I don't think that's not what most people do. I think what we get to offer is ourselves grace. Like, it's okay that I'm freaking out in this situation because I have been through this before and that was really hard. And naturally, I'm going to get nervous or stressed or worried or defensive, whatever it is in that experience, right? Like if you've experienced any sort of abandonment, or like in a relationship, if you've disrespect, right? You get more defensive or more sensitive to signs of it so that you don't have to go through it. We don't want to go through it again. I think there's a period, some of that it's okay. And sometimes it gets in our way. But I think what we need to create space there to figure out if it's how to best respond is to hold an in-between space of grace, right? So if it's the turbulence, you're on a plane, there's turbulence, and you recognize your body's going to respond to these, your nervous system has had an experience that's going to trigger, if you're my friend, right? Differently than my experience. And so me offering others grace and then offering ourselves grace, if that were me, of saying, it's okay that I'm responding this way because my body is just wanting to keep me safe. And now that I don't have a whole lot of control in this situation, I'm putting my trust into the laws of the universe, to pilot, to this airplane, right? Like, and just having a conversation of grace and patience and love. So it was so interesting to observe and recognize. I did get the opportunity as the ride settled down a little and we were all able to unbuckle and kind of move about and stretch some before it came again, because it was about 2/3 of the flight. It was a lot. And she was so cute. I happened to be just standing up in the aisle and stretching. And I just said, yeah, whew, that was some crazy turbulence. She's like, I about lost my mind. She said with a cute Southern accent. She was darling, and she just was working through it. And I think doing her very best in that situation. I think that's all we can ask of ourselves. It's doing our very best. So where's your turbulence in life? Pink has a great new song about turbulence, and that I liked the lyrics. Let me hurry and pull this. There's just the panic is temporary, but I'll be permanent. So what is the permanent, the certainty in the midst of the panic? Anyway, Pink's song Turbulence is really good on her new album. But hopefully that's got you thinking a little bit, and consider where your turbulence is right now in your life, and that can shift and change. It can also keep being a consistent thing you get to work on, right? But where's your turbulence? In uncertainty, where do you find certainty? What do you find certainty in? And where can you offer yourself grace? Where can you recognize others needing grace? Grace meaning that space in between, to not judge it, to give it space, to just be what it is so you can assess what to do with it. Okay? Bye-bye.